Hello, welcome to our overview of the arts from the Pacific Islands. Today's lecture is different from our previous lectures in the sense that the continent we will explore is not a land continent, but instead is an ocean continent. The peoples of the three major areas of the Pacific, Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia, were masters of the sea and successfully navigated great distances across the ocean using rudimentary techniques and a deep knowledge of the waters and astronomy. Though often related, the cultures, religious beliefs, and artistic traditions of the island nations in the Pacific all have their unique characters. So we will look at some examples of the most prominent locations and artistic styles. Many of the objects we now consider to be art from the Pacific Islands were made for ritualistic purposes, as we have seen with many examples from non-Western and ancient civilizations. There are some similarities, as in the techniques of sculpture and painting, but there are some significant differences too, namely in the use of the human body as a medium for art through tattooing and performance. The artistic practices communicated messages about specific social and political dynamics in societies, and helped convey religious beliefs and mythological narratives as well. We begin in New Zealand, a nation made up of two islands located southeast of Australia. The indigenous peoples of New Zealand are the Maori, who not only have a long tradition of woodworking, dance, music, and other artistic practices, they also are known for their practice of tattooing, which is the insertion of ink or dye under the skin to create a permanent marking or design on a person's body. The Maori people are believed to have arrived in New Zealand in the 13th century, coming from the islands of eastern Polynesia. In the Pacific, canoe travel allowed contact and settlement among the islands, a testament to the ingenuity and adventurous spirit of the early peoples of this vast expanse. Images of the Maori early on emphasize their elaborate tradition of tattooing, called tamoko. In this technique, chisels are used to puncture the skin and insert pigment, almost in a carving motion, which not only leaves the skin permanently dyed, but also textured with bumps and grooves on the surface. Both men and women display the moko tattooing, but men usually wear it on their faces, torsos, and limbs, whereas women usually wear it on their chins and lips. The moko are designed for each unique individual, indicating important events in the person's life, as well as important identifying information, such as family lineage, tribal affiliation, social status, and personal accomplishments. This image was made by Sydney Parkinson, a draftsman originally from Edinburgh, Scotland, who ended up accompanying Captain James Cook on his voyage to the South Pacific in 1768. He was part of the company of scientific gentlemen who were brought along to record the discoveries made on the voyage regarding the flora and fauna of the islands, and to make detailed topographical maps. Parkinson made over 1,300 drawings before dying of dysentery at sea in January 1771. Parkinson was one of the first Europeans to set foot in New Zealand, Australia, and other islands, making meticulous renderings of the people, such as the Maori, to record their customs and features. We can only imagine what the Maori and the Englishmen thought of each other upon first sight. Luckily, a great amount of Parkinson's work still survives in the collections of the British Library in London. Originally built as homes for chiefs by the Maori, these large wooden meeting houses eventually became important centers for communal assembly in the Maori societies. Meeting houses serve as sites for important religious rituals and social ceremonies, but they also serve as sites for political meetings as well. The experience of entering one of these meeting houses represents the movement from a world of conflict and aggression to a world of peace and tranquility, where arguments can be settled and the stresses of life can be quelled. The outer area, called the Marae, is thus appropriately associated with the god of war, called Tuma Ta'uenga, and the interior area is associated with the god of peace and agricultural cultivation, called Rongo. What we see here is the inside of a meeting house in Waitangi, located in the North Island of New Zealand. This meeting house was constructed in 1940 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Treaty of Waitangi, a treaty signed by the Maori chiefs and the British on February 6, 1840. The central posts, called Po'utokomanawa, that support the roof are carved into figures, and the supportive wall panels and posts along the sides of the meeting house are also carved to resemble different humanoid figures and display ornate abstract designs. These carved figures are believed to be representations of ancestral spirits who preside over the communal gatherings. Much of the wood is colored with a red ochre, symbolizing the great amount of bloodshed that occurred during the mythological separation of the cosmos, namely the earth and heaven, which caused a red glow in the sky. This red is a sacred color to Maori, used to stain the wood carvings and decorative patterns. It would make a viewer inside feel enveloped by this red sky, as if they were present for the creation of the heavens and the earth itself. Papua New Guinea is an independent island country that consists of the eastern half of the island of New Guinea and some surrounding islands. One of the major parts of Melanesia, Papua New Guinea covers a diverse range of cultures and societies that have been developing on their own for thousands of years. Though the diverse indigenous peoples of Papua New Guinea are also skilled wood carvers, the arts of the Abalam people in the northern stretches of the main island also produced sophisticated woven objects. The Abalam people cherished the yam, an important member of the sweet potato family that they rely on. Woven and dyed masks have been traditionally made for festivals and ceremonies revolving around yams, and these masks were used to adorn the large root vegetables rather than humans. Since the yams cultivated by the Abalam can be extraordinarily big, sometimes several feet in length, competitions are held to demonstrate which man can grow the largest yam. These competitions are taken very seriously, as the size of the yam directly reflects upon the status of the man who grew it. At the annual harvest and festival, the men display the most impressive yams, solidifying the health and prosperity of the village. Additionally, men exchange yams with permanent exchange partners, and the object is to offer your partner a longer yam than the one you receive in return. This mask would have been created to decorate one of the more impressive yams, given special decoration and treated with great care to demonstrate the pride and status it provided for its grower. In addition to weaving elaborate adornments for yams, other peoples in Papua New Guinea create woven garments to be worn by people during performances and ceremonies. The Tolai people of the island New Britain, for example, use these woven adornments during the initiation rituals of the Dukduk, a secret society that still continues to this day. Though the rituals are known only to members of this society, it is believed that the role of administering justice over societal matters, given to Dukduk members, is no longer the primary focus. Seen here is one of the types of ceremonial costumes worn by the male Dukduk members, called the tubuan, known to attract female spirits. As only men are allowed in this society, They are the ones who wear the costumes. And men working through the 5 parts of the initiation process, called ritual grades, would have been the intended viewers. Part of working through these grades is the purchase of these ritual costumes, which would have been a great expense for the individual men and garnered him great prestige. Now part of the United States, the islands of Hawaii were once an independent nation. It is one of the most isolated populations in the world, though, being thousands of miles away from any other major nation. The Hawaiian Islands were settled by travelers from as far away as the Marquesas Islands in Polynesia, around 400 CE. In their canoes, they brought plants and crops, as well as animals, to cultivate in the new lands they sought to discover and settle. Europeans didn't arrive until 1778, when Captain James Cook and his crew arrived on the island of Kauai. Upon his return a year later, Cook was killed by Hawaiians during a dangerous encounter on the Big Island. Shortly thereafter, King Kamehameha united the Hawaiian Islands under his rule and began a dynasty of kings who followed. In the aftermath of their contact with Europeans, and later Americans, the peoples of Hawaii became known as an innovative society that was vulnerable to domination by outside political and commercial forces. By the end of the 19th century, the Hawaiian Islands had been annexed as a U.S. territory and became a state in 1959. Traditionally, the noblemen in Hawaii wore colorful, elegant feather cloaks called a hu'ula for important ceremonies and especially for battle, since the cloaks were believed to offer the protection of the gods. Like the kente textiles from Ghana, these adornments communicated specific qualities about the wearer based upon the colors used. The red feathers were from the iwi bird, and the yellow feathers were from the even rarer o bird. These feathers were bundled together and sewn onto netting in overlapping fashion, working from the bottom part of the cloak to the top, creating a blanketing effect. The narrow top of the cloak would have been tied around the neck of the wearer, creating a close fit and completely enveloping him in the colors and textures. Although these were prized possessions that were passed from generation to generation of noblemen, they were also offered as gifts to sea captains arriving in Hawaii from afar. This particular example was a gift from the proud King Kamehameha III to the American naval officer Commodore James Lawrence Kearney in 1843 and returned to Hawaii in 1927. Fragile as these feather cloaks are, some beautifully intact examples still exist in museums around the world today, bearing evidence of the artistry and hospitality of the Hawaiian people. Easter Island, called Rapa Nui by its first inhabitants, was populated by Polynesians exploring the vast Pacific Ocean in canoes. Like the Hawaiian Islands, Easter Island is extremely remote, over 1,000 miles away from the nearest island or landmass. Though it is still unknown exactly when or why the island first became inhabited, some researchers believe human development dates back to 800 CE, while others date the earliest human activity to 1200 CE. It is now called Easter Island because the first Europeans to discover the island, Dutch explorers, arrived on Easter Day in the year 1722. It is thought that the island was once covered with trees, providing a shady and fertile area for its population for hundreds of years. However, when the trees began disappearing, the land became more barren, and warfare broke out among rival tribes as people competed for decreasing resources. Unlike the places we have seen so far, this Pacific island is famous for monumental stone sculptures called moai. It is now thought that one of the reasons Easter Island lost its trees was the production of these monolithic stone sculptures called moai. Carved out of giant volcanic boulders between 900 and 1500 CE, these sculptures required an immense amount of labor and resources to be transported to their posts guarding the coastlines of the island. There are around 1,000 moai carved and arranged around the island, some facing out to the sea as guardians, and others facing inland, as if in conversation with current inhabitants. The sculptures measure anywhere from 10 to 60 feet in height and weigh up to 50 tons. They stand upright, arms at their sides, without any semblance of a realistic lower body. Instead, emphasis is placed on their facial features and head adornments, displaying elongated earlobes, pointed chins, and angular noses. These large stone faces represent the spirits of the ancestors, commemorating the proud family lineage of the islanders. Though many moai stand upright, many others have been found toppled, either fallen during transport or deliberately felled in an act of dominance of one group over another. Many researchers believe hundreds of tree trunks would have been necessary to transport these large sculptures by rolling them along a series of logs, while others believe they were moved using dozens of men pulling ropes in alternating directions to walk the sculptures down the hills. We may never know exactly how these monumental sculptures were created and moved, yet we can still appreciate these stoic figures standing watch over the small island amid the vast ocean surrounding it. This concludes our brief overview of the arts of the Pacific Islands.